where your PowerPoint begins. In 1776, the colonists were divided into three groups. Remember we did talk about that one. Now this guy's in his PowerPoint said 40% were patriots. What are patriots again? People that want the British out. What are loyalists? People that are loyal to whom? The king. And then the neutral people were people that weren't quite sure. Now, he says 40, 40, 20. I've seen books that say 33, 33, 33. It's not really important, the number. What is important is America was divided. Okay? The country was not... Is that half the people wanting war? And the answer is no. Half the people didn't want war. So something's going to have to happen. For America to win the Revolutionary War, we're going to have to move some people from neutral to patriots. So that's going to have to happen. If that doesn't happen, we're not going to win the war. Now that was going to be the process. It's going to be important that America make that transition and get people to support the war. So, this is just words you already have. Loyalists want to remain British colonies. Neutrals decide what to choose, and the patriots, they want to separate from Britain. They want independence. Okay, is that on? And you can just take what you need here. I'm going to skip a lot of the Declaration stuff, or just run through it real quickly because it's important, but we don't really have a lot of time. I want to make sure we get to the battles and things. But there are a couple of questions to test about the war itself tomorrow. Only about one or two. Okay. Any questions about that? Wait a minute. Okay, this is not important. How do we get this point? This was the road to revolution quadrant 2 you've already done. So we'll just go right through that. Even though it's got some noise y'all probably like to hear, I'm going to go through it. These are the things we've already done. Okay, so we're going to skip over here. So what's going to have to happen? We were told this yesterday. What's going to have to happen is 40% of people don't want war. We have to convince them to want the war. And how do you do that? How do you convince people to change their mind? What's the word? It's a P word. You use propaganda. And so we talked about two propagandists yesterday. Thomas Paine, who talked about the king, and then Thomas Jefferson, who wrote this Declaration of Independence. So that's what we're going to focus on for a few minutes. I think this is where your next part of your PowerPoint begins. By July 1776, enough Americans were patriots that they formed a committee to write the Declaration of Independence. Now, you need to know that the principal author was Thomas Jefferson. So when we talk about the Declaration, we always talk of Thomas Jefferson. He's the guy that we give credit for in terms of writing the Declaration of Independence. Okay? You see where you are? Anybody? Yeah, you're good. It was based on the enlightened ideas of John Locke. And John Locke's the guy that had natural rights, which he said were life, liberty, and what? Freedom. No, he said life, liberty, and happiness. Now, Jefferson said pursuit of happiness. He said property, life. So John Locke was the guy that came up with the idea of the natural rights of the Enlightenment. And then Thomas Jefferson took those ideas and just tweaked them a little bit to come up with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which in Will Smith's movie, he got tired because they spelled happiness right. Remember it wrong. Remember the Juicy movie? They kept spelling H-A-P-P-Y. And you ask them why. Why do you spell happiness wrong? Okay, so this is what enlightened people believe. All men are born with natural rights. That citizens can break their contract if government takes away those rights. This is what's influencing American thought in 1776. So Jefferson's going to take these ideas, and he's going to use these ideas to write the Declaration. Yeah. Sure. Right. So there's the committee: Jefferson, Franklin. See, Ben Franklin helped write it. Roger Sherman, Robert Livingston, John Adams. Now, I just want you to look at the Declaration for a second. Next period, we actually went through these because we had time. But we're just going to go through. If you'll look at the statement that are written here, let me borrow yours, Kendall. If you look at that, these are the 8 most important statements of Jefferson. So just take a second to read each. Read the first one. Read it. Okay? Just read it out loud for me. Somebody read it out loud for me, Isabel, the first one.
In the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impelled them to separation.
So what's Jefferson saying in a very simple way there? When a country is getting ready to break their bonds with another country, they have to do what? They should do what? Tell them why. And this is like, if Jefferson were writing a paper, this is his thesis, he's going to tell you why. So here's what you want to write in the second column. We should explain why we're declaring our independence. Jefferson believed America should explain why they were declaring their independence. We need to tell the world there's a reason. So Jefferson's going to offer this logical argument, and he hopes it will persuade people to do what? To join the cause. Exactly. He wants people to join the cause. Not only in America, but he wants people abroad to join the cause to help us fight the British. Because the British are the #1 nation in the world, and we can't beat them by ourselves. Look at the second statement. Megan, read that one to us.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So Jefferson's saying what? That all people have three what? Three basic rights. And he calls them life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So the summary is all people have natural rights. And just for you to know, natural rights are something that the government can't take away from you. They belong to you, and they're given to you just because you're a human being. They're yours, and they can't be taken away. So he's giving us this lot. So he said, we have to tell why we're rebelling. And then he begins his argument. We all have natural rights. Okay? Government can't take them away. Third one. Read that, Grant.
The third one?
Yeah.
It says to secure these basic rights are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
So what's it tell us? That government's power comes from whom? Who gives government power? The people. So the source of power is not the government. The source of power is people. Government's power comes from the people. That's the third statement. That's a very important idea. That's an American idea. That's an enlightened idea. That government's power, I hear kids and parents complain all the time, I don't like our government, I'm not going to vote. And I always tell them, don't blame the government. Who is the government in democracy? The people are. Your parents are. I am. You will be. If you don't like the government, do what? Vote and change it. Don't sit there and complain about it. If you don't vote, it's going to stay the same. So he's saying government's power comes from us. We're the source of power. Read the fourth statement for me, Gavin.
That whatever any form of a government becomes destructive in protecting the right and responding to the people, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government.
So what can we do according to Jefferson? If government's not protecting our natural rights, what can we do according to that, Dana? What can we do? What's he saying in statement 4? If government's not protecting our rights, we have the right to do what? What's it say? It's right there. And you may not know the word. It may not be a word you're comfortable understanding, but he says if government doesn't do what it's supposed to do, what can we do? We can alter it. What's that mean? What does alter mean to you? Alter something, if you alter a dress, or you're doing what to it? You are changing. He's saying we have the right to change it. Let's see what they say here. I don't know. Okay, if the government can't protect the people can create a new government. So he's making this argument, guys. We have rights. Power comes from us. If government can't protect our rights, we can do what?
Change it.
We can create a new one. And that's what he's going to authorize America to do. This is this lockstep, logical argument. He's trying to convince you to do what? What's he trying to convince us to do? To fight, to rebel. He's trying to convince those 40% that are neutral, join the cause. Because you have a right to do that. All right, number 5. Read number 5 for me, Brittany.
The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and
Usurpations.
all having in direct object the establishment of the absolute tyranny.
A tyranny. So he's basically saying that what is the history of our colonial experience? Who's he putting all the blame on?
Okay.
Who's caused the problem?
Okay.
The king. So let's see what he says here. King George has abused his power. So he blames everything on the king, not Parliament, and that's important because Parliament's elected by the people. How's the king get his job? He's born into it, so this is the guy we can pick on. He's not democratic. He's a tyrant. You know what a tyrant is? I'm tyrannical. Some people think teachers are tyrannical. What's tyrant mean? No, it could be annoying to you, yeah.
You control everything.
I control it, and you don't like that. But by nature, we like to be free. So if someone's a tyrant, then you sometimes bang up against him. George III was a tyrant. Number 6. Read that one for me, Caitlin Newton.
To prove that England has interfered in colonial rights, but the fact that the Spanish handed rule, he has refused to assent to laws that must wholesome and necessary for the public good.
So he's basically making an argument. What's the king done? He's not doing what? He's not doing his job. He's not assenting to the laws. He's not following the laws. So these are the reasons we believe the king has abused his power. Basically, they think the king is just ignoring the laws that are passed. They think the king is just acting without responding to the people. He's blaming. If you read the Constitution, the Declaration, it's a bunch of things like he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this. Who's he? The king. Jefferson's blaming, and you need to remember this because it's a test question tomorrow. Jefferson's blaming everything on the king. And so did Thomas Paine. Blame the king. That's a good target. Put a big X on the king because he is not democratic. He's a tyrant. All right? Number 7, Devin.
In every state of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act he may define a tyrant is unfit to be the rule of a free people.
So what's the problem here? We petition the king. What's that mean? We ask him, please. Remember the olive branch petition? We petition the king, don't do these things. And what's the king always done? What's his answer? He ignores them. He goes back. So what does Jefferson, in our words, it says this. We explain why the king is unhappy. He's ignored us. So let's just write that down. The king, yes, okay. The king has ignored us. The king has ignored us. And he's hurting us. He's taking our freedoms. So this is everything in the Declaration's about the king. Everything's about the king. And then number 8. Read number 8 for me, Tasca. Hey, you don't have it. No. Okay, you read, Caroline.
We therefore solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states.
Yep, so he's basically saying because of all these things, we're declaring ourselves what? Independent. Free. We should be free and we are. So we're declaring our independence. You've broken the contract. You have a contract to protect us. You haven't done it. Therefore, we have the right, according to the Enlightenment, to get rid of you, and we are. So who do you think Jefferson was writing this declaration for? He's writing it for us to do what? To support it. And who else might he be writing it for? Who else might he want to read this?
The British people.
The neutrals in America, but what about outside America? Who might want to read that thing?
People who could support us in our
What?
fight. People who could support us.
People who might. Who is England's number one enemy in the world? France. He's thinking maybe France will read this and know what? They'll help us. So he's writing this for everyone except the king. He wants the king to know here's why we're doing it, but he's really trying to convince people to support the war. All right, so let's go on. That's the Declaration. You can read it sometime. It's all about he. Okay, so the Declaration was our formal separation. This picks the PowerPoint back up again. Was our formal separation. But the war really began at Lexington and Concord. That was the first battle. Lexington and Concord was 1775. The Declaration wasn't until 1776. So we declared war after the wars already began. We know that this is all things that the formation of the Continental Army is under George Washington. He's our general. He later will become our what? He'll become our first president. Okay, he'll become the president. Okay? All right, so we're going to look at some of this. This is something you might want to know. How can America win the war? What are some strengths and things that we have going for us? Look up there. What do you think is going to give America the biggest advantage? Look at those up there. What do you think is the most important advantage America has in this war? We're not nearly as big as Britain. We're not nearly as developed. We don't have manufacturing. What is it that will basically be our biggest advantage? What do you think, Grant?
It's on their home turf.
Why is that an advantage?
Because they know the terrain better, they know where, like for later in when they have the guerrilla tactics, they know where to hide.
They know where to hide. How many have seen the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson?
Oh.
If you haven't ever seen that movie, that is the perfect example of why we can win. You know, we don't fight the way they fight. We fight behind the trees. We shoot their generals. You know, back in those days, they had rules for war. You had some stupid rules, like you don't shoot the generals. You don't fight on holidays. You don't fight in the wintertime. I mean, these guys, and you march around in straight lines like this, and you wear these bright red uniforms, somebody's beating drum. It has some really pomp and circumstance to the way they fought. And the Americans think, that's a bunch of stupid stuff. Here we are in our coonskin caps, hiding behind trees, shooting their generals in the head. If you saw, The Patriot, you saw how Mel Gibson was able to just drive the British crazy. So that's an advantage. We have the home field advantage. What else could be a big advantage? How about the last one? Inspiring cause. We're more highly motivated. Americans have something to fight for. We're fighting for what? Freedom. What's Britain fighting for? To keep control. Which one's more motivated? Let's go control these people, or let's be free. Which one's going to be more highly motivated? We are. We're much more highly motivated than they are. Many people in Britain like us. They don't want to fight us anyway. And they're questioning, what do we do? So what's Britain got going for it? They got army. They have an organized army. They already have a strong government. They have loyalists in America. Those are all important things. But they also have enemies who don't like them. And so that's going to help America in the long run. All right? So even though we're the underdog, we do have some things that might go for us. And we'll talk more about that. But here's again, when the war began, they had a military advantage. They had 400% larger army, more money, the most dominant navy, and they get to manufacture. See, we don't manufacture. We were colonists. We sent them the raw materials, and they made the manufacturing. So we don't even manufacture cannonballs. I don't remember the scene. Do you remember the scene in The Patriot when Mel Gibson took his little kids' metal soldiers, and what did he do with them? He melted them down for what reason? To make musket balls. Because the Americans didn't have even enough ammunition. So that scene was pretty neat, because that's true. We had to take things that we already had. He took those kids' tin soldiers, or metal soldiers, and he melted them under heat, and he turned them into musket balls to use. Because that's typical. Americans didn't have those kinds of things. But the Americans were familiar. They had a commitment to win. They had short supply lines, and they only had to defend. We don't have to win. All we have to do is drag the war out and make the British quit. And you should understand that in the 21st century, because you've seen it happen in Afghanistan and Iraq. Americans were in those wars for a long time. Did we win either one of those wars? We're still in Afghanistan. And the answer is no. We didn't lose them, but we didn't win them. They just dragged on until we finally just came home. Okay? Now we may be going back now with ISIS, but the point is, that's how underdogs can beat powerful countries. Just drag the war out. People don't like war. Fight defensive war. Fight guerrilla warfare. Yeah.
It's kind of the same with like Vietnam.
Exactly. It's just Vietnam is called. That is their American Revolution. They fought us the same way we fought the British, and they won. They beat us. Now we hate to admit that, but they beat us because we didn't have the will to defeat them. Could we have defeated Vietnam? Yeah, we could blow the whole country up. But the American people didn't have the will to fight that war. We gave up on it. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. So we said that this war becomes a model for all small countries. You want to complain about ISIS today? They're following whose example? Us. Fight that way. Fight this guerrilla warfare. Fight defensively. Drag the war out and make the Americans quit. And they will. Because that's what people do. They're not going to keep fighting forever. Okay, Britain underestimated the commitment. They didn't realize how badly Americans wanted to be free. To win, the English had to find the army and then defeat them. That was going to be a trouble. As long as George Washington kept an army on the battlefield, America had a chance. Washington becomes a symbol of the American cause. He also becomes our first American president. He's a guy, remember in the French and Indian War, that fought the French and the Indians with and the battle for Ohio Valley. And he was good at those kind of things. He had great experience. He encouraged common citizens and volunteers. People rallied around him. He was able to keep an army together. That was his greatest accomplishment as a general. But the American soldiers didn't give up. He inspired them. And thus, that's why he was so respected. Yeah. Okay, you will move. Mr. Bear's clicker's gone, so I have to stand there where I've got to turn it, or I can't. Wherever I stand, I'm gonna bother somebody, I'm sure. Okay, is that better, Alexis? Okay. And also, I step back. Okay, this just shows you the type of American fight. They don't have uniforms, you can see that. Women participated. Okay, differing styles. Okay, is that one of your PowerPoint things? The Americans try to defend, they try to drag the war out. They use guerrilla tactics, they make an alliance with France. Put a star by that, that's important. That's important. We're going to get France on our side. And they're going to help us. Do you remember in the Patriot, that little short guy? That guy that he befriended? You remember the guy, the little short guy? He was French. I don't know if you caught that, and you can tell by that. He was French. He was supposed to be Lafayette, who was a French guy. And they're going to help us win the war. Without the French, America would never have won the Revolutionary War. The British, they want to divide and conquer. They figure they can just find their loyalists, and the loyalists can help them win the war. So they keep trying to find loyalists. They encourage slave revolts. They thought it was a good way to get to America, encourage slaves to rebel. But if you remember, once again, I keep making references to me. You saw it in the movie The Patriot. Remember the black guy that fought with Mel Gibson? And he fought, and they said, if you fight so many days, what happens? You become free. And so we turned that against the British. Actually, some slaves were able to become free by becoming fighters for American independence. Just like that guy in the movie. That's true. That did happen. So they're going to try to split us up. They're going to try to blockade our ports. They're going to try to cut off trade with the French. That's how they hope to win. But the French had a great navy, and that navy is going to help us break through the British blockade and help America win the Revolutionary War. So you can't underestimate the importance of the French. They were crucial in America's win. As long as Britain did not defeat the Continental Army, England could not win. So as long as the army was still around, and George Washington never surrendered his army, he kept an army on the battlefield, we could win the war. England could not win. This is in your book. You don't have to look at it. These are the major battles. So this is what you want to just pay attention to. We're going to run through quickly the major battles. The first battle was Lexington and Concord, the shot heard around the world. That's where the Minutemen first fought the British. And then in 76 and 77 around New York and Philadelphia, the Americans had some bad times. They're losing. So in 76 and 77, it looks like the Americans are not going to win. But something happens in 1777 that's kind of a turning point you have to be familiar with. So we can see in 76, they burned New York, they burned Philadelphia. Things are not going well. But two big battles turn the tide. First one was on Christmas Eve in 1776. George Washington will cross the Delaware River. He'll catch the British by surprise, and he'll have our first victory. Now, what made that? The British thought, how uncivilized was America? We're fighting on what day? You're supposed to have, that's a holiday. That's a time to have parties and drink wine and have a good time. That's what the British soldiers were doing. And the Americans caught a bunch of drunk British soldiers, and they win. So our first big victory is because we don't fight the way they fight. They were taking the day off. They were celebrating Christmas, and we were celebrating the victory. This is a very famous portrait of Washington breaking through the ice on the Delaware River. I'm sure there was that. If there was that much ice, then this is proof that there is global warming, because there's not that kind of ice in the Delaware River anymore in the wintertime. So I think that's a little bit of an artistic exaggeration of going across the river in 1776. And then they come across in Delaware, surprise attack at Trenton and Princeton, two big American victories on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. From the beginning of the war, America was led by Ben Franklin, who tried to form an alliance with France. So Ben Franklin actually goes to France, hangs out for a bit, tries to get the French to help us, and he'll be successfully negotiating a treaty with the French. And this treaty will be important for the next unit. Unit 2 will talk about this treaty a lot that we got with the French. The French government was willing, but they wanted to make sure that America had a chance to win. So they were waiting for an important American victory. We had to win a battle, a big battle, to prove to the British that it was worth their risk. The French did not want to tick off the British unless they thought they could what? Win. So what was the proving battle? What was the convincing battle? It was Saratoga. Know that battle. Circle it. It's important. When we defeat the British in New York State at Saratoga in 1777, that's the battle that convinced the French to help us. That's when they thought, okay, America's got a chance. If they can win this, because we captured one of their major armies at Saratoga. Okay, so the Americans win the battle, and the French become our allies, and that's going to be a turning point in the war. And that probably is the turning point of the war, when the war turns in our favor. Okay, Battle of Saratoga was the turning point, or was a turning point. Because they become our ally. We grab an ally. After Saratoga, that's when General Lafayette helped train American troops. The French Navy began to help us to take away the British advantage in the open seas. Like I said, in that movie of The Patriot, that little short guy, he was Lafayette, supposedly. That's the guy that America was hanging out with. When the French troops arrived in 1778 to help us, the war was going to shift in our favor. So that's a big... the French began fighting on American soil in 1778 for the Americans, with the Americans. Another major turning point was Valley Forge. It wasn't a battle, it was a winter headquarters where the Americans seemed to be on the verge of giving up. And Washington and Lafayette inspire and train our troops and keep them around. If you ever go to Philadelphia, it's like one of the major tourist places to visit, Valley Forge, because that was the darkest, sometimes referred to as the darkest hour in American history. It looked like Washington's troops were going to go home. It was a very harsh winter. They were starving. They didn't have shoes. It's snowing. And to be able to keep his army intact was a major accomplishment, and the army doesn't fall apart, and so Washington keeps his army around, and that's going to help us win the war. From 1778 to 81, there's a bunch of battles fought. Both sides win some, lose some. But the biggest conclusive battle was in Yorktown. And that's the, once again, if you saw the movie Patriot, that's the last battle in the movie Patriot. They're outside Yorktown. They trapped the British army. Cornwallis surrenders his army, and the war is going to come. The war is going to come to an end at Yorktown. So you might want to circle Yorktown. It's important. That's where the war comes to an end. Now, there was a battle right before that in Greensboro called the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, which helped weaken Cornwallis' army, and he retreated from Greensboro to Virginia. And so oftentimes, because we're from North Carolina, that battle is also remembered because Guilford Courthouse was a costly victory for the British. They had to retreat because they lost so many men. And they went to Yorktown hoping for reinforcements. And you can see that Yorktown it's near Jamestown. It's on the James River and the Delaware and the Chesapeake here, and they came here waiting for supplies, but the supplies could never get it because the French Navy got out here and blocked the British Navy from getting there. So Yorktown is on a peninsula, and Cornwallis was trapped. He was waiting for supplies. The supplies never come. The Americans and the French surround him on both sides, and he has to surrender. When he surrenders, the war's over. That is the principal British army left in the battlefield, and the war is over. We're not going to watch that. George Wallace surrendered to Washington in 1781. The American Revolution ends. People call this the day the world was, turned upside down. Because some upstart colonists defeat the #1 world power. Major upset. Okay. The treaty that ends the war is called the Treaty of Paris. They spent about a year and a half writing the treaty. That's the last part of your PowerPoint. This treaty gives. I want you to look at the two maps. You do have two maps on your handout. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, what was the
Cornwallis. The army of the British General Cornwallis between the Continental Army and the French Navy. That's Cornwallis. Yeah. The treaty gave America. Look what happened. Look at the map. Look what happened. There's the map, and you can see that. We're going to gain all that land that used to be British, but not this part. This part goes back to Spain, but the American nation becomes the Mississippi River to the Atlantic Ocean, from the Great Lakes to Florida. This is the United States in 1783. That land had been British, and now this area still stays Canadian, still is British. So you have three major powers now in North America. You have the British, the Spanish, and the Americans. The French are still not in that area. The French got some other stuff back, but they didn't take any land in the New World. It gave America full independence. We're free. We're no longer part of the British Empire. It gives us all territory east of the Mississippi River between Canada and Florida. And then the British Army has to remove itself from America. Yeah.
British was in control of Canada, then how come there are like French Canadians?
Because we already talked about that. You might answer that question. How is it? Why are there French Canadians? What do you remember about that, Zach?
Because we Canada.
But how did French Canadian become British?
Because of the French and Indian.
Because of the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War, the French lost, and they had to give Canada to the British. That was their punishment. So we talked about that one day at Lectures. You may not have been in class yet. And that's why in Canada, you've got two basic sections. This part of Canada is all French-speaking, and this part of Canada is all English-speaking. And so it creates some, even today, there are people in Montreal that would like to secede from Canada. They'd like to have their own French Canada. There's not a lot of love between French Canadians and British Canadians, even today. Okay? So you can see the difference. 1754, there's a question you asked before the French Indian War, Alexis. You can see that was the map we did before. And you can see where the French were. And then after 1763, you see how all that land now became British. And then in 1783, it becomes America, British, and France. So you can see how those maps change. It's really important to look at those maps, how they change. Look at those maps. French and Britain and France, and Spain, then Britain and Spain, and then Britain, Spain, and America. That's pretty much the map thing you want to look at there. Okay, now, we went through that really quickly. We got a few minutes because I want to tie a few things for you up and sort of a quick little outline for you to look at. So, what I'd like to do, just to make sure that you've got this for tomorrow's test, a couple things you need to know. I feel like we did a good job of talking about how America could win this war. So let's spend the last part of the period looking at this. If we had to look for turning points, this is the only notes I want you to take. I want you to write, because these are, to me, when you study a war, you want to know what's important. You don't need to know all those names. I'm not going to test you on names. You should know George Washington, right? Because he's an American general. He also becomes an American. I'm not going to go into all these different people. But I do think you should know this. Who were the turning points? What were the turning points? So I'm going to list some things up here. And I'd like you to look back at your PowerPoint, talk to the person beside you, and tell me, how was this a turning point? What's significant about the thing I put up here? So the first one up here is Lexington and Concord. Okay? So take about 30 seconds and tell me, why is that a significant turning point event? Talk about it quickly. I'll call on somebody to answer the question. Go.
No, I'm talking about July 17th. I'm talking about Lexington.
Okay.
I'm not talking about Lexington. I know about Lexington.
All right, so tell me. Let's go through and look at this. Tell me what's significant, Nora, about that battle. Why do you remember Lexington and Concord? It's the first battle. The shots heard round the world. Remember that quote. Shots heard round the world. It's the first battle. This is the beginning of the Revolutionary War. 1775. Shots heard round the world. Write something down like that. It's the first. Right? So that's an important event. That's sort of the beginning. Now, this battle is not in your book. If you read it, not in your book, it wasn't on the PowerPoint. But I like to share this battle because it's an interesting battle. Right outside Boston. And it's in 1775 as well. And you may have heard this famous battle. This was the fight for Boston. This hill overlooked Boston. It's actually misnamed. It really was not Bunker Hill. It was Breed's Hill, but you don't have to remember that because we always, even today, we call it Bunker Hill, even though it's the wrong name. But the battle for Bunker Hill, the British were trying to drive the Americans off this hill. And they march up with like 2,000 troops. And there's a famous saying there, the Americans don't have much ammunition. So their general there tells them, hold your fire till you see the whites of their eyes. Now, what does that mean? They have to be pretty what? Pretty darn close. And the reason is musket balls weren't very accurate past about 40 yards. If you aim at something, it might go 40 yards straight, and after that, there's no. So you hold your fire. We don't have much ammunition, so you make sure they're close enough to what? Hit them. So the idea was the Americans are entrenched. Here come the British march up the hill in straight lines like a bunch of idiots, and we wait till they get close and we shoot. And then, of course, we haven't got any muskets, so we turn. We run out of musket ball. We turn and we run. We retreat up the hill. The next group fires. They retreat and run up the hill. Now, in the end, we lose the hill because we don't have enough what? Ammunition. But we kill and wound over 2,000 British soldiers. And the general of that battle said, if we win any more battles like this, we're going to lose the war. In other words, we may have won, but if we lose this many people in every battle, we're going to lose the war. They may have won the battle, but they might what? Lose the war. So this is a contrasting style. It shows how America's going to fight. You know, we're not going to fight the way you fight, and you may win a battle, but you're not going to necessarily win the war. We don't have to win every battle. We just got to keep the war dragging on. Kill lots of British, make them want to do what finally? Make them want to leave. That's all. We just want you to leave. We didn't care whether we won or not. We want to drag the war out so much that you'll get tired of it and you'll go back to England and leave us alone. That's the whole American strategy. So that's what happens. Bunker Hill, pretty important battle. We have this one with PowerPoint. You should notice. You talk about this one. Why was Trenton and Princeton important in 1776? December 24th. 1776. Talk about it real quick. Why is that an important battle? Go, quickly. I'm going to call on somebody. Go, quickly. Why was that an important battle? Look at your notes. You get this ticket? Okay. So what do you think about that one, Savannah? What do you think? Was it an important battle? Y'all were talking about it, right? So listen, when you take advantage of this, when someone's talking, listen. If you don't know the answer, listen. Okay? Taylor, what do you think?
Because it was like when the British got drunk or whatever.
Well, I knew you'd remember that part, about them getting drunk.
And then like killed him.
Why were they drunk?
It was a holiday.
What is the rule?
You can't fight on holidays.
Christmas Eve. So what are Americans doing? We do it anyway. So what's important about this battle? Okay, we fight on Christmas Eve. That's wrong. But what's important about the battle? Come on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the
First major victory for Washington. Exactly. The first major victory for Washington. It helped morale. It's the first major victory for the American Army. But we had to do it in a rather underhanded way. We fought on a day that they were taking a nap. They had hangovers. Okay? And we got them. But we didn't care. Okay, so you want to write that down. First major victory. All right, next battle. Saratoga, which was 1777 outside New York State. It's in New York. Talk about that. Why was that an important battle? So if I call on you, don't say you don't know. Listen to what people are talking about. Go quickly. What's it about?
Okay.
All right, Hannah, tell me. Why is it important?
That's when the French made French bread and we began getting people down back.
Very good. We get the French ally. The French become our ally. And why is that important? We need their navy. We need their supplies. We need their ammunition. We can't manufacture stuff. We need the French to win. This convinces the French to help us. And that alliance will be a problem in the next unit, 1 and 2. But for right now, we like the alliance. Saratoga, 1777. Okay, in North Carolina, we like to remember this one. Guilford Courthouse, 1781. That's outside Greensboro. Just in case you don't know that. I assume y'all know where Greensboro is. So, Why is that an important battle? And it really was. There's a huge battlefield there. I mean, I grew up in Greensboro, and there's a place called, I lived up a road called Battleground. In fact, in my neighborhood, the streets were named Cornwallis, Lafayette. All of them were Revolutionary War names. So it's kind of a neat place to be. Very, very historical. But the courthouse, what made that an important victory? Or wasn't a victory. Actually, the Americans lost there, but what happened?
They weakened up Gage's army.
We weakened up Cornwallis and Gage's army. You know, forces Cornwallis to retreat to where?
Yorktown.
To Yorktown. He loses enough men there that he's got to get to Yorktown to get some supplies. And we know when he goes to Yorktown, that's bad news, because what happens there? The war comes to an end. This is the battle in Virginia, and that's where the war comes to an end. The war ends there. And the quote was, the day the world was turned upside down. You might want to, sometimes I use that quote, the day the world was turned upside down, because Americans won a battle and won a war that many thought they never had a chance to win. Okay? Now, that pretty much takes us through this whole thing. And I went through it quick, but I think you got it. I mean, the battles, to me, the most important thing for you to understand tomorrow is the things leading up to the war. And we spent a lot of time on that. The battle themselves, I mean, you might see this battle, you might see that battle, you might see that. They might, you know, I gave the ones they might mention to you, but they're not. We don't need to get into strategy. I'm not a military history teacher. I'm not going to talk about this army did that. That's typically something that's not interesting to most people. But those battles spell out what was important about the war. And we win. But we win probably because of our determination and because of the French and whatever. So now, I want us to do this together. This is kind of like it's a great review for your test. So I'm going to give you something. We got about 10 minutes. And I want you to look at this, and I want you to work on this together. See what you make sure you understand the directions. But if you can have this, I do believe this will be a great piece of information to study tonight for your test. Okay, as I'm passing this out, let me tell you about the test. The test tomorrow is 25 multiple choice questions.
Really?
And then if you're taking this for regular credit, you have 3 MSL essay kind of questions. They're not really essays, but they're one's a political cartoon you have to analyze. And if you're taking it for honors credit, you have 4. And there's a couple of different questions. They're not the same thing.
She's in class.
So the test should not take you. The test should not take you more than
45 minutes.
It shouldn't take you about 25, 30 minutes. Yes, this is yours.
Picking it
What I
up.
want you to do, make sure you understand. Look, guys, here's what you got to do. These are the word clues. And what you want to do is you want to put the numbers in the right part of the timeline. Like, read the first one. After independence, the border of the United States was the Mississippi River. So where would that go? Under what heading? The Treaty of Paris. So under the Treaty of Paris, you'd put a 1. That statement goes under the Treaty of Paris. You understand how to do this? So all you're doing is, it tells you there's 2 words that go in the Treaty of Paris, there's 6 that go in the American Revolution, there's 7 on the clauses. So you see, you're looking. This tells you how many clues you're looking for. So your job is to use those 20 numbers and put them in these boxes. So this is your last chance to earn some extra credit. What you're going to do is this. If you can get, if your table gets all these right, you're going to get 3 extra points on your test. Now, some of you have already earned 3 points for turning homework in, so you can get up to 6 points on your test. Some of you only earned 1 or 2 points depending on how much homework you turned in. You know how much you turned in. So if you turn no homework in, you have how many extra credit points? None. Okay, so this could be 3 more points if you get the numbers right. So talk about it quickly. We've got about you got about 7 minutes, and if you get done, I'll check your table, but I get to check the persons I want to. So if I check Josh's and he ain't got the same thing y'all have, then you get what he has. So you want to make I'm checking 1 person per table. Go. More than 3. Did you want?
Dude.
You got some quizzes. There's something you can do there.
Because I was feeling because you have a problem in your life. No pressure at all, though. It's just all of ours. No, I'm encouraging you. Yeah.
Number 2. Wait, yeah. Talking about.
I can't really, Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
I can't really see the pictures all too well.
You know what?
Can't make out the pictures still too well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't do that.
I'm just best I can do. That's a good question. No number goes in more than one heading. So there's only 20 answers and each one chooses one. Okay? All right. Which one do you have to go on? Which one?
I copied these down.
No, because see, there's some other notes that have. Yeah, but it says those things on the
Number 5 could be more.
7 there, 2 there.
Number 5 is not what I said. Yeah, it's also that.
Fine, it's
Number 1.
I'm ready for it.
Wait, that's the end of it. No, that wasn't even part of. Was that part of the tree?
Who's done? Okay, good. Come check it. No, don't be help me make it out. Don't help me make it out. Let me see. I'm gonna check. Yeah, you got 2 wrong. I can tell you right now. You got one of your premium Paris things wrong. Okay. One in American College is wrong. One in the College is wrong. And one in the American College. That's pretty good, actually. Look at one in Canada. Second category.
Is 20 number the one with no TF and stuff that nothing?
Wait.
So we have too many here, so I need to.
That's not bad though.
So 3, 4, 6, 8.
Good. Not bad.
The continental army.
Not bad.
All of those.
There was Bill. 14. I can get 7 minutes. That's good. We get 7 more minutes. Good.
3, 4, 6, 8.
Right.
I don't know.
So number 2 should be here.
I thought 8%.
It can't be American. That's
What's starting this again?
The line where we can't go to the Ohio Valley.
So, alright, hold on, down.
It's kind of a big deal.
Alright, down. Before.
yeah, this is my
Oh.
Yeah.
We're missing one for the Treaty of Paris.
I didn't go there. I went into Oh yeah, that's
You got that?
Thomas Paine.
Listen to it? Alright.
No, what did you just say goes into the No, what did you just say goes into the
That'd be
Listen, this doesn't go there. Okay?
I'll probably go with
Wait, which
Okay, well, wrong
This
there.
is 11.
Look at him again.
Number 20 might go there for that encourage people.
this one right here.
Yeah.
The Declaration of Independence was signed on July. No, that would definitely be the revolution.
Yeah, that would be bad with
Alright, here's what we're going to do. Since we don't have time, and I want to give you a chance, we're going to go around. Alright, I'm going to call on somebody, and you give me where the number goes. If we get 20 for 20 right, we get 3. So, statement number 1, where does it go? We know that it goes in which column? It goes in the Treaty of Paris. How about number 2? Treaty of Paris, very good. Number 3, where does that statement go? French and Indian War. Where's number 4 go? French and Indian War. Okay. Where's number 5 go? American colonies.
Yeah.
Yes? No?
Yes.
How many think that? Okay, that's half, over half. That's the answer. 5 goes in the first column. 6. Colonists did not like the British policy of parliamentary sovereignty. It means Parliament do what they want to do. When did colonists complain about that? Causes. That's where it goes. It goes in the third column. Colonists were mad about the proclamation of 1763. That could go under causes. That's just the start of the whole thing. That's the end of salutary neglect. George Washington led the Continental Army. Taylor? The American Revolution. That goes in the fourth column. Salutary neglect meant the colonists could create their own colonial assemblies. When did that happen? That's during the colonial period. That goes in the first column, number 9. Number 10, the Boston Massacre showed colonists' frustration toward the British. When that happened? That's a cause. That goes in the third column. Declaration of Independence signed. The American Revolution. Definitely. That goes in the fourth column. The Battle of Lexington and Concord. The American Revolution, fourth column. The Intolerable Acts. Causes. The last battle at Yorktown. The Revolution. Restrictions through mercantilism. That's the column. It's the first column. Or first, yeah. Sons of Liberty. When did the Sons of Liberty take action? They're the causes. That's we did it yesterday. Stamp Act. Causes. Townshend Acts. Causes. And then we had 16, 17, 18. And then Saratoga. American Revolution. And then Common Sense. Thomas Paine. When did Thomas Paine write that? He wasn't a cause. He was trying to get Americans to support the war. It already started. He wrote that was in 1776. So that would go in the fourth column, right? You got that? All right. So nobody has worse than +3. Some of you have as much as +6 if you turn all your homework in. Okay. All right. Study tomorrow. Hey guys, I would tell you 3 things to study tonight.